Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Crispus Attucks York's 40th Annual MLK Day of Service. I am Dr. Hudson, Director of the Early Learning Center for Crispus Attucks York. I will be your Master of Ceremony and moderator for this morning. So thank you for joining us for this virtual event. Crispus Attucks York has proudly hosted the MLK Day of Service to bring communities together for a day of remembrance, appreciation, service, and fellowship for 40 years. While we're not able to fellowship in person due to the weather and had to go virtual, we are blessed that you were able to join us as we continue to honor Dr. King's legacy. Today's virtual program will feature a panel discussion focusing on the theme, A Time to Break Silence. This theme is inspired by Dr. King's April 4th speech in 1967, which was delivered at Riverside Church in New York City. So please note today that because of the weather, we regret to inform you that we will no longer be serving free grab-and-go breakfast and lunches normally for our MLK Day of Service. The breakfast, lunches, and Living the Dream Awards will take place at a rescheduled date, so stay tuned for more details and keep an eye out on our website as the event will be rescheduled. At this time, we'd like to recognize our partners. Although we're not in person, we still want to recognize the three key partnerships that have made this event possible. First, we want to thank Church and Dwight for graciously donating the Living the Dream Awards. Next, we want to thank the New York Rotary Club for donating many of the breakfast and lunch items that will be distributed later at a rescheduled event in the community to shelters and other nonprofit service organizations in the area. Last but certainly not least, a program that's dear to my heart. We want to recognize the York College Community Opportunity Scholarship Program for their annual engagement and support. Thank you all for your generosity. We are grateful for your partnership. Now we'll move into our panel discussion. We are so blessed that we are able to have this panel of student advocate leaders from the Panther Anti-Racist Union, PARU, organization founded in the Central York High School of York, Pennsylvania. Today's MLK event focused on the power of the voices of our youth. The Panther Anti-Racist Union is a youth organization focused on spreading awareness of issues of racism and social injustice within the New York School District and beyond. So at this time, I'd like to introduce our panelists. Ms. Edha Gupta, Ms. Christina Ellis, Ms. Olivia Patuch, Renee Ellis. Each of these ladies serves as a member of the Panther Anti-Racist Union called PARU, a club at Central York High School under the direction of Mr. Hodge Jackson, who are Central York High School educators. These ladies work together to actively protest a ban that the Central York High School District placed upon books and other resources that promoted diversity and inclusion and were written by BIPOC authors. Because of the efforts, the school board ultimately reversed the ban in late September. Let me give you a little background about our ladies. Edha Gupta, she's a high school senior at Central York High School, and she's the president of the student organization. She has dedicated most of this year to promoting a more equitable school environment with her peers and hopes to continue this path of activism as she pursues medicine in the future. Ms. Christina Ellis, she's also a high school senior at Central York. She serves as the vice president of the organization. She's very passionate about educating others on the importance of diversity, education, and inclusion within the community. She intends to take her activism work into the medical field. Ms. Olivia at Central York High School, and she serves as a secretary and social media director. She believes that education is a crucial part of diversity and representation is very important. She's an activist and she plans to continue fighting for justice, representation, diversity, education, and a safe place in our communities. Ms. Renee Ellis, she's a junior at Central York, and she serves as the Director of Communications and Outreach. That both of her parents raised her and her sister to be the people they wish to see in the world. Continue to learn to make her people proud and to stand up for what is right. In addition to being a student activist, she's an artist, an inspiring entrepreneur that is within several clubs and organizations at her school. As we welcome these student advocates, let me remind you of the theme for this morning. Our theme for today's discussion is A Time to Break Silence, inspired again by the speech made by Dr. King in 1967. Although Dr. King's speech was given in response to the Vietnam War, the words he used still apply today. Let me share a few quotes. A time comes when silence is betrayal. The truth of these words is beyond doubt, but to which they call us is a most difficult one. He also goes on to say, and some of us who have already begun to break the silence of the night have found that the calling to speak is often a vocation of agony, but we must speak. So our youth panelists are in our community who have begun to break the silence, and they have been met with both challenges and successes along the way. So thank you, ladies, for taking the time to speak with us today. As we begin our panel discussion, we have a few rules. We want all our panelists to speak. And we want to be respectful of their time. So we hope that we get through all of our questions. But let's begin. So some of the questions that we have for you are, what silence have you broken, like to break in regards to social issues of today? Who wants to begin?
I guess I can start it off. Thank you for having us here. We really appreciate you holding this for us and having a space for us to speak. And to get to the question, my experience in breaking the silence throughout protest has been different than Christina's or Olivia's or Renee's. And for me personally, a lot of it was being an Asian American and protesting this from that viewpoint. As the so-called model minority in this country, it is not something that you see often for Asian Americans to be in the media or be protesting or to be standing up for the injustices that they face, because a lot of the injustices that we do face come from casual racism or microaggressions. And I never had that, example for me to look at when protesting. And throughout all my education, in all 12 years in this district, I had experienced, discrimination, but I never felt as though I could speak up about that just because of my background and who I was. So this year, I really broke the silence as an Asian American woman, speaking on issues that I had been dealing for all my life, racism and discrimination against my cultural foods, my attire and my religion and the way I lived was, something that I got the chance to speak about just this year after years of, going through these things in this school district. And oftentimes in the Asian American community, these things are deemed as acceptable, like microaggressions and casual racism, and often people don't even notice them. So I really appreciated the chance to finally break the silence by speaking on these issues that many people don't even realize exist today towards the Asian American community, and to educate people on those issues so in the future they aren't repeated again. Oftentimes Asian Americans, come to this country to earn a good living for themselves and just to get by and to give a better life for their children. But I am glad that I can be that first generation child of my parents to speak up about something that I'm passionate about and to promote a more equitable future for not only this generation, but for the generations to come.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christina Ellis, as mentioned. Thank you again so much. Just echoing off what Ida said, thank you so much for inviting us today. And for me, as an African-American student, when the breaking the silence for me was about generations and for the future students of our community. When I first heard about my school's book ban, I didn't really think about myself. I thought about the little kids within my district, and I wanted them to have a fair chance to know about their history and to feel welcome and included. And so that's why I broke the silence in a way, and helped Ida and Olivia and Renee and the rest of us within Peru to protest and everything, because I thought that this is not just about me, this is bigger than myself. So I had to do something to step out and to get outside my comfort zone. I have never really protested, and as an African-American student, who's lived throughout the nation, whenever I was, discriminated against within school or microaggressions, I kind of just rolled off my back because that's just the way it was. And sadly enough, a lot of people within my family have accepted that it's just the way it is. You know what I mean? But when this happened, I kind of had my tipping point, and I was like, I can't sit still. I can't let this just go away. And it was a moral thing. I keep on saying, like, my moral compass would not let me just sit there and not do anything about this. This was something bigger than myself, and I knew that I had to step out to make a difference. So just echoing off what Ida said, like, it was bigger than us, and so we had to step in and do something. And even if nothing ever happened, or if we didn't find a way, the way it worked out with the ban being reversed, at least we stood out, at least we said something, at least we made noise about it, because we couldn't just sit still.
Hi, I'm Olivia Patuk. Once again, thank you so much for having us. This is super awesome. But I was never really a very bold person. It wasn't until I was about a freshman entering, high school, that I really became involved in politics and, social justice and stuff. So whenever our school held its first protest, I showed up because it was my first chance that I was really going to try to make a difference and break the silence. And then after that, I became a lot more involved, so that by the time we came to the beginning of this year, and I saw the book ban, I was also, when the book ban was kind of announced, I was very new in, I had come out as being part of the LGBTQ plus community. So a lot of these emotions were very new for me. And it was really especially harmful to see your school taking away diversity resources, because this was not just BIPOC, this was also LGBTQ plus resources. So because I was so new to the community, that really hurt a lot too. So it was, I was really then motivated and ready to break the silence, because if I was this affected, I couldn't imagine what people who were closeted, or BIPOC people who were very, very insecure about themselves, or kind of not wanting to be themselves. I couldn't imagine how that was affecting them. So I really, really, really wanted to do something about that. And that's when I worked with my incredible officers and advisors. And we really wanted to try to get our voices out there and let people know that this was, causing harm. So we really were inspired to break the silence. And we'd always seen, all of these issues within our school, like, homophobia, racism, et cetera, et cetera. But we knew that these issues would only become more prominent with these resources being taken away. So I think that was a, big motivator for all of us to begin our journey in breaking the silence and educating other people.
Yes, and again, as everyone said, thank you all so much for being here. When I thought about the question that you've asked, it really caused me to really think within myself and to think about how has this experience, as we've all gone through, has really made a difference in our school. And when it comes to the theme, breaking the silence, I think that this book ban really brought to light some of the issues that aren't really talked about in America, like assimilation, microaggressions, book bans. That's the things that we know exist, but they're not really taught. I think us being able to protest, going out there and bringing this to the forefront of our community really allowed us to not only break the silence, but have change come through breaking the silence. As an African American, I've experienced those things in my school and around me, and I didn't really know what to call it. I didn't know how to address it. And it really is important to me that we're helping other students and other families be able to know what these things are and to do something about it. One of the things that has been like the highlight of this entire experience is has the community come together and we be able to stand shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, and really fight for what's right. And we're able to stand up against the things that were hidden for so long. I feel as though for the past decade, at least from my experience, that things have gone from being hidden to, coming out more. People are now being more vocal about their racism. People are now starting to really show face about how they feel about people of different colors or different sexualities or different backgrounds. And I think them being able to break their silence allows us to break our silence and say, we're not going to just sit there and let history be hidden or let history be changed just because other people have their viewpoints and their racism and things like that. We also have a voice. I think that's something that many marginalized communities, they struggle with because we're marginalized. You don't really have the platform. We don't really have the opportunity to speak up. So this experience and the overwhelming support of the community has been wonderful for us to be able to push for change throughout York. It's been a great experience. And I want to continue to push to break the silence on more issues that people within our community struggle with. I think that the pressure to want to look and be a certain way, I think the microaggressions, the assimilation, I think the overall fear that many people have now, those things need to be talked about. I think they need to continue to be pushed to change. And I think that more is being done and can be done to further help bring together the community. I think one thing that people forget when they talk about us is that we're the Panther Anti-Racist Union. We're not here to divide the community. We're not here to divide our school. We're here to bring people together. And when we say people, we mean everybody. So we are going to bring to light the issues that people of color face, that people like Olivia face, people in her community face. We're going to bring that to light because this is about everyone. We want everyone in our community to be together. Love isn't built in half truths and lies. Love is built in unity and the truth of us all. So we want to continue to push for that and continue to break the silence of the things that have been hidden for so long. Like this book ban was just another way to hide some history, hide some experience, but we're going to break that. We're not going to stand for that. We're going to let people be able to speak their truths and to be able to bring people together. You can't hurt someone whose story you know. So we're going to continue to fight for that.
All right. Wow. What a powerful introduction. Ms. Ellis, you just kind of was a segue into our next question here. How would you summarize the cost of not speaking up when given the opportunity?
Well, for me, I feel like the cost of not speaking up is way bigger than the cost of actually speaking up, if that makes sense. I feel like when you sit down and you don't say anything about these issues, it causes a pattern to continue, if that makes sense. So I feel like for so many years, especially in the African American community, we've been pressured to be quiet. You're not supposed to speak up about certain things. You're not supposed to bring into light about certain things. For example, I have most recently did a social studies project about my family history. And there are so many past papers, history about my family that were just hidden under the rocks. You cannot find them. Documentation's lost. Marriage certificates, birth certificates gone. Like I traced back to maybe like 7 generations and that was it. It was all cut off. And I think it's because during that time, people weren't allowed to speak up. So now we're breaking that cycle. We're going to continue to speak up and to not let our history die because that history is what helps channel our future. If we do not know what not to do, we're going to continue to do these things. And we can't learn off of lies, basically. We can't learn off of people wanting to change the truth. Any way that it comes through, any way that it shows up, we're going to know what happens. And we don't want to continue to have to learn hard lessons. So speaking up has a way better reward than being quiet, because being quiet will cause for history to continue to repeat and for things to continue to get worse.
Excellent response. Okay, I like this. Is there another panelist that would like to contribute to that conversation?
I could probably speak on it a little bit.
All right.
So specifically throughout our activism, there was, of course, things that we had to face. There was sneering comments. There was social media, which is it's a really huge thing in today's world, in which you can receive a lot of love or you can receive a lot of hate, and we received a lot of both. And we also, throughout this, there was that mental toll that rejection can take on you, because with any activism work, there is always going to be the initial rejection before you can say to yourself that, this is bigger than me, and what this is going to do, and that vision of the equitable future that we can have is bigger than, our mental blocks holding us back. So I think throughout this process, the cost that we pay was a lot of mental fatigue, and this rejection, and a discouragement of our spirits. But in the end, what kept me going forward, and what kept me saying, whatever the cost is, that vision for an equitable future is always going to be greater than the cost that we have to pay. That vision that students can walk into a library, students of color can walk into a library as young children, and they can see themselves showcased and celebrated in the books that they read, and instill a confidence in themselves that will follow them for the rest of their lives. And that's something that us students, and me personally in this district, did not have. And knowing the importance of that, that's what really kept me and us as an organization going on for so long, because we knew that, if we didn't speak up, no one would. And if we didn't keep going, it would just stop. Advocacy would just stop, because, that's how it seemed that as the whole public wanted us to do. That's what the public seemed to want us to do, to just stop. So in our cost, I think we came to a much, much fruitful future. And I'm so glad that we continue to fight and we continue to do our activism. And yeah, that's right. And our cost was way less than, the civil rights leaders of the past, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and other leaders of that time. And just looking at them as our example of perseverance and hope in times that are so hard, really kept us going, because they were our role models throughout this whole protest, with nonviolence, and just advocating for what's right. So I really do hope that in the future, young kids can grow up to feel secure in their identities, who they are, and I hope that they can feel confident enough to stand against discrimination when they are faced with it. I don't think our problems in this district is I think our problems are far from being solved, but I think that our youth is really the solution. So yes, that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Well thought out. Very powerful message you just delivered. Okay, I'll take one more in that question. Do we move on to the next? Anyone else would like to add to that?
I'd like to add, so going off what Ida said and Renee said, I kind of want to combine it together. So my sister and I, Renee, and I saw her project she did with the 7 generations and everything. And as I have had my personal conversation with my family members, and I did a similar project when I was a sophomore. And I just talking to some of my family members who it was like a dead end. There was no hope for us to get answers. They didn't really, a lot of my family sometimes, they don't necessarily agree with me stepping out of the norm, the societal norm that they built for themselves, because it's too dangerous. Nothing's going to happen. You're going to embarrass yourself, all these things. And then I realized, like, for them, they never really had the chance. When I talked about their education, they never really had the chance to be represented in their classrooms. They never got to saw that you can be a doctor, you can go to college. There's more to life than just the streets of Chicago. That was not they didn't have that in their head. And so I can understand why they can look at me differently and be like, why is she doing all this? Because for them, this is it. Like, living paycheck to paycheck, that's it. Not being represented, having your kids, that was the end of the road. And so when Ida talked about how kids are the answer, that is true, because it starts at a young age. If you tell kids from a young age that they will never be more than just another number in the system, that's what they're going to that's who they're going to think they are. That's who they're going to raise themselves up to be. That's how they're going to teach their kids. It's a generational thing. So when you start at a young age saying, kids, look at this book. This is a person. This is a doctor, a Black doctor, an Asian doctor, a doctor, a part of the LGBTQ plus community. You can be this. This can be you. Look after these people who've dedicated their lives to learning, got off the streets. That is where it starts. And if we do not let kids have that space in classrooms, if we don't let them ask questions, make mistakes in a safe environment, and to build themselves up, you're going to have this continuous cycle. And then people will look at each other and go, well, why can't they be better? Because they never got the chance to be better. They never got the chance to learn better. That is why we have these issues in our society. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to teach our kids and with our school district that there is more to life than what you see sometimes. It may be rough at home, but there's more to life. So here's some books, here's some resources. Let us be a space for you to talk, for you to cry, to laugh, to breathe, like everything. You know what I'm saying? Some of these kids do not have a place when they go home to be themselves, to express themselves, to learn themselves, to learn about the world. There is no place like that. It is just regular day-to-day. We just trying to get by. And we're trying to stop at just trying to get by. You can be more than being just by getting by. You can be whoever you want to be in life if you put yourself to it. And we're just trying to help them do that.
All right. Well, thank you. Woo. I'm so inspired by your messages. Okay, we're going to move on to question number 3. Who would you consider your role model, the person that inspired you to speak out and break the silence? You want to start with Olivia?
Sure. So I would say that I've definitely got inspiration and motivation from all of like the bigger names like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and all the other like big name activists. But honestly, my main inspiration has been the quote unquote little people. For example, my mom has taught me that you don't just like stand by and let others be, trampled over. You have to speak out for what you believe and you have to speak out for what's right. And she's been standing by me this entire time and motivating me to keep going, even whenever we were having our tough times. And I've also gained so much inspiration and motivation from our incredible advisors, Mr. Hodge and Ms. Jackson. They've always been so ready to stand by their students no matter what, and to stand up for every part of the community. And they're the ones who helped kind of pull this together. And Mr. Hodge helped to organize that initial protest back in November of 2020, I believe. And they really, really helped me get started and really helped me learn how to get by my fear and truly break the silence and just keep that going. And then, of course, I have learned so much from Ida, Christina, and Renee. Whenever I feel down or feel like I can't keep going, they're always there to pull me back up and teach me so many amazing lessons. I mean, I'm already learning so much just by sitting here and hearing them speak. It's definitely been such an honor to work with all of these people, and they have been such an incredible source of motivation and inspiration for me.
Okay. Thank you for sharing.
I'm kind of like Olivia. I have like you have the big names and then I have like your people close to you. So I have about 3 like my biggest inspirations. First, Martin Luther King Jr., of course. I love his form of activism. For me, I'm not a huge fighter. I'm more of a communicator. So I like to have conversations. I like to talk with people. I like to sit down and really have a good discussion, a productive discussion about how we can fight for change. And I love that he teaches on nonviolence. I love that he sat and talked with people. He marched peacefully. And that type of activism is what I aspire to activate towards. Trying to, instead of trying to fight back, I'm not really with the aggressive type of protesting that you see, or like social media protesting. I like when you have people, and he's such a big inspiration of this, that sit down and they really talk to you. They don't want to try to force you to do anything. They want to communicate and help you to learn about why these matters are important, why these topics are important. So he's a huge inspiration. Another like big name, but more modern day, is Chance the Rapper. I know that's kind of like far out there, but I really like him because my family's from Chicago, so I have to support Chicago. And he he's an artist, and I, as an artist myself, like I can really relate to that. He uses his activism, or he gets his message across in his songs, and I love that because he's an independent artist, so he doesn't rely on other people to try to funnel his message. He's able to express himself. He's able to really help people learn through his music, and he could communicate with so many generations of people. You have young kids listen to his music, older people listen to his music because they understand the message. So I love his form of activism. And then my sister, she was the one that really pushed me to stand up. Like I said, I'm not a huge fighter. I'm not a huge like in the front type of person, but she is. And so she was like, come on, we're doing this together. So she really helped bring me along arm in arm, and she's been kind of helping me guide the way. So I definitely have to say she's definitely one of my big role models.
Thank you.
For me, I would have to say, you know, there's multiple people throughout this whole journey that have really helped me to speak the way I do today, and be here and even in the Zoom speaking as I am today. And I would say it had to start from in my home. I do have a bigger sister, and, you know, throughout my childhood, as much as I wanted to reject a key part of my culture and my identity and who I was, and I wanted to suppress that, she never let me. She always was dressing in Indian cultural clothing, or was so open about our culture and our religion. There were diversity celebrations at our school every year, and I stopped wanting to dance to Indian music after I was 9 years old. And she continued throughout high school. And as much as I wanted to say, like, you know, maybe being Indian American is not something that's appreciated, and maybe this is something I should suppress about myself, my sister always showed me the beauty in our individuality, and the beauty in not suppressing that, and educating others about that are uneducated about your culture. And even though we weren't on the front lines of protest, it was like in our home every day. You know, she showed me to embrace myself, to be who I was. And even though I didn't realize that message to way further in my age, you know, looking back, you know, I never fully was able to reject my Indianness just because she was there as a role model for me to look up to at all times. And coming into this protest, it has been this huge support system of Olivia, Renee, Christina, and Mr. Hodge and Miss Jackson, who have been there to say, you cannot be silenced. Your voices are too strong. And as young people, we have been told so many times that our voices are not strong enough to make a rift in people's opinions, or not strong enough to really impact people in a significant way. But Miss Hodge and Miss Jackson, Mr. Hodge and Miss Jackson were both people that never let us think that way. They never let us be deterred from our mission. And when I was down personally, they were the ones to take my fall and say, hey, listen, like, your voice is more powerful than you know. And if you keep going, this will be an amazing thing that you can do for your community. And as them as my teachers and my advisors, as well as all the peers here that I'm speaking with, all of them encouraged me to keep going. And of course, you know, throughout our protests, we constantly looked to people like Martin Luther King Jr. and James Baldwin, all people who spoke through communication, going off of what Renee said, and all people who promoted nonviolence. And that's really what we tried to emphasize in our protest. So there was multiple people that impacted me in that way.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. Ms. Christina.
Yes, so for me, obviously, it's Mr. Hodge and Ms. Jackson and my fellow Peru officers, because we have become so close, such a tight-knit family. And believe it or not, you would think that we have known each other for years and years and years, but Olivia and Ida and I, we weren't as close as we were until like September. And that is crazy to think about, that it's only been like a few months, like 6-7 months or so of us being this close. And I feel like I've known them for years and years. And so I have to give props to Miss Jackson and Mr. Hodge, because when we first started this, it was rough. And activism is a full-time job on top of being a student and having a part-time job myself and doing theater and trying to apply for colleges. It was a lot at times. And they were always there to like have their classroom doors open for us to just come in to kind of just like process. And Miss Jackson is so good. Like I remember one time I broke down her classroom. I was at lunch and I was just having a day. Nothing was going right. And I just broke down and she rushed over without a shadow of a doubt and just started just embracing me and just been, it's going to be okay. And Mr. Hodge has always been there to have his classroom door open. He's like, what do you need? What do you need? You need space. You need time to breathe. He's so good with like just making sure that you have what you need. You need us time to breathe. Just sit in my classroom. Go take it, like go sit in the corner, take a little nap for like 5 or 10 minutes, something like that. But they've always been like that. And I appreciate it because it's really hard sometimes to stay afloat, especially with everything on. We forgot that this is a whole pandemic going on too. And so they've always been there. And then with Ida, Olivia, and my sister, they've always just been like companions within this. Like we have our days when we like have business things to do. Like we got to get this done, and then we kiki and laugh and joke and all this stuff. And it's just such a well blended balance. And then I also want to give one of my role models is my dad. And if you've ever met my dad, him and I, my sister can attest to this, we are like the exact same person. It's copy and paste. And so I have to give props to him because he's always been a person, and when I was younger, I never really like understood until like now I'm a little bit older, but like he's never been a stagnant person. He's always been move forward, do better, push harder. And at first when I would come home with my partner, I got all A's, he goes, okay, what's next? And he was never a type of person to like make you like think that was it. It was always better, do better. And so that has helped me with my activism because I'm like, what can we do now? Okay, we got the book ban reverse. What's next? What's next on our line? And I've gotten that from him. So I have to give him props for that, for teaching me that like, you don't just sit there. If something's not working for you, you move on. If something can be better, you do it. If you can go farther, you go to the furthest you can go. You push. And he's always had that tough love on my sister and I. And that's where we get it from. And so I have to, like, as Emma was talking, I just thought I have to give a shout out to my dad because he has been so supportive of us. I mean, he's also had the long nights when we just go all over the place doing everything and the protests and everything like that. And so, yeah, I have to give props to him for doing that as well. Yeah.
All right. That's fantastic. Okay. You have some awesome role models and they have been very impactful in your lives. And thank you for sharing that. And Ms. Christina, you just led us to our next question. This is our last question. How would you encourage other students and groups in our community to break the silence?
I say that do not be offended. Do not be scared of who you might offend. There's going to be people who are going to go against you. There's going to be people who are not going to agree with you, but that you shouldn't let that stop you. If you have a purpose that is bigger than yourself and that you know that will help thousands and hundreds and even a couple of people, you do that. It's going to be scary. You're going to have hardships. You're going to lose people. You're going to, have your times, but you have to do what's best. And so I say for the kids and for everyone to break their silence, start with what you know best. Social media. We use social media all the time as Gen Z. And so we have to use our resources. Start with the Instagram post. Gather your friends together and start doing something like that. Start like a little live on Instagram. You never know where it can get you. And so when I say to like the kids and everything like who are my age, don't be scared. Even though it is going to be scary, but don't let that deter you from doing what you know is best. Trust your intuition, find a good support system. If you can't, start with yourself, and then the right people will come your way as well. It starts small and it can end really, really big. Just know your purpose, have a goal, and go for it, no matter what.
In our first protest, we as a group didn't expect more than 5 people to show up. We were like, we had our protests, at the beginning or, before school. And we were like, high schoolers, who's gonna wanna wake up at 7 o'clock, get in their car and come to the school and stand outside and protest? And surprisingly, we had over 50 people in attendance. Like every day we did a protest. And it just shows you, and it shows the young people in this country, that if you take a stand for something you care about, people see and people will care. The amount of support that we have gotten from this community has been overwhelming, really. And it's crazy how many people are willing to back you up as soon as you're the one to take the stance and make the change. A lot of people are afraid to do so. A lot of people are afraid of the backlash or getting out in the public or speaking so publicly about issues that are so important and that can garner so much hate. But when you see, examples like us, we were also afraid. We also had no idea what the future had in store for us. And we would only expected like 5 people to show up. But when you speak about something, you would be surprised about how many people are really willing to back you up and support you. So to all the teens that are feeling discouraged, just know that there's a big community of people that are there for you. And this ban is not something that's consolidated to York, PA. You see it happening all across the country where educational materials are being revoked from schools. People, children are not getting the holistic education they need. And just by doing what we did, you can make, as Mr. Hodge says, a ripple effect across the country just by this one dip in the pond, this one protest, this one change that we made. I hope that other students in other districts can look at us and be like, they did that. Like, we don't think we could, but they are students. They are only in high school and they did that. So maybe we could too, because I think for a long time, also as young people, we have this mindset that if we stand up for something, we won't be listened to, we won't be heard. But if you, as a young person, demand that space and demand your voice to be heard in these situations and are perseverant in that, it will happen. Change will happen. Change is inevitable. So I just want to say to young people, and I am a young person, but if you see something, please say something, and the fruits of your labor are going to be amazing, even if you don't expect them to be.
I had a lot of different thoughts when I first heard the phrase breaking the silence. And one way that I kind of helped to like analyze it is silence can be deafening and scary. But the way I kind of thought of it is when you're in a classroom, it's quiet and no one wants to say anything. It's awkward. It's, once again, the silence is deafening. But once you have that first student that starts to whisper, that there's no more silence anymore. It's been broken. So then another person is like, oh, I can whisper now too. And then sure enough, the whole room is filled with conversation. So once that silence is initially broken, even if it is just a whisper, barely a whisper, it can cause that ripple effect, and people will immediately gain that confidence and that motivation because there will be no silence anymore. It doesn't matter if it's barely broken, it's broken. So that's something that really, really stood out to me when I first heard the phrase. But also there's a quote said by, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that I really love. It's nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. Education is such a vital part of breaking the silence. You need to educate yourself so that you can educate others, because ignorance is so dangerous and most of the time glossed over and not even really noticed. And it can take the form of hate. It can take the form of, lashing out, but it's simply that ignorance and people need to be educated. So to all those people who are wanting to break the silence, the big part of it is education. Talking to people, like Renee was saying, communicating, opening those safe places in schools and in communities. It's really, really important to help people understand your issue and help people understand. You don't even have to go and you don't have to protest. You don't need to go and fight. Simply having those really important discussions or providing those incredible resources, or just having that first whisper, that can do so much more than a lot of people think. And kind of like what Ida was saying, young people are constantly told that they're irrelevant, that nothing that they do is noticed. And I feel like in our world today, there are a lot of adults who turn their noses up at teenagers and shut them out because they think that they don't know any better. But I'm kind of here to say that your voices do matter. Take it from us. We're just a bunch of teenagers. We're not even graduated high school yet. And we were able to kind of get our voices heard and get out there. So if you have that first whisper, if you start speaking, you will be heard.
Renee, did you have something to say as well, or?
Yes, their answers are pretty much perfect, but my I guess my answer to the question would be a combination of all three. Definitely don't be afraid to speak up. Definitely communicate and definitely reach out and use your resources. When this first happened, I remember we found out about the book ban. It was raining, so we weren't at school because they were worried about flooding. But the next day, we went back to school, and the first thing I did was I talked to my social studies teacher. I said, "What's going on? What's happening? What's the deal with everything?" And through that conversation, I was able to really understand what happened. One of the articles, it made it seem like it was the principal who initiated the ban, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. So then I ended up talking to the principal. That chain of discussion helped me to get a clear understanding of what actually happened, and that way we didn't have a protest around something that was incorrect. We had a clear understanding of the situation, a clear understanding of who did what's going on, when did these things happen. So we were able to come together organized and with a clear message and a direct message so we weren't mistaken. And that's back off of what Olivia said, sorry. Um, you can't be ignorant about these type of things. When you stand up and when you get in front of people, you want to make sure that you're as correct as you can be. You're never going to be perfect 100%, but as close as you can get it, that's what you need to be. As close as you can to getting exactly your message correct as much as possible. Also, don't be afraid to go out there, especially talk to people that you don't usually talk to. I've talked to some kids in my class who I think would be opposed to my beliefs or opposed to who I am. But having those type of conversations opens the door to more unity within the school and within the community. Also, having a group like Christina, Ida, Olivia, Mr. Hodge, Miss Jackson, like this is our group, this is our circle. And like Christina said, like we didn't really know each other. I definitely didn't know them because I'm a junior. Christina was my connection to them. So, and I didn't have classes with Mr. Hodge or Miss Jackson. So having that group and being able to talk to different people and to come together, again, it's a unity thing. It's like so important for us to not just be a group that just fights for this, attacks this. We're a loving group, a unified group, a group that pushes for community. So that's what we want to embody. And if you are going to go out and protest, if you're going to go out and speak up against things, you have to make sure that your heart's in the right place. You don't want to attack anything or go for anything or address any issue out of hatred, out of ignorance, out of malice. That's not how you make positive change in the world. You want to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. I think that's where so many people or so many issues in America right now are getting dicey or getting confused, is because we feel so strongly about a topic or about a situation, but we're approaching it with so much aggression, so much hatred, feeling like everyone's attacking us, instead of opening doors for conversation, opening doors to be able to love one another. Like I said, a beloved community. Yes, we actually were learning about that through the King Center. Yes, and shout out to the King Center. They're a great resource. But yeah, having communication, having good resources, and coming from a right place, I think that's a great way to be heard. And really don't be afraid. Like Ida said, we have social media. There's a group for everybody on social media. Social media is one of the most inclusive and dangerous places that America has right now. There's something for everybody. So just get out there and come from the right place. Have a genuine heart, and I think that you'll get far.
All right, thank you. Wow, we just heard from some dynamic youth advocates. We are so proud. This was such a dynamic and inspirational presentation from you all. And you are the change agents that's going to make a huge difference in our community, in our. So on behalf of the Crispus Attucks Association of York, we wish you much success in your future endeavors. We know you're going to do great. And we're so proud that you were here to share your experiences with us. And you answered those questions so phenomenally. You are phenomenal young ladies, and we're so proud. So thank you again for joining us. As Dr. King said in his 1967 speech, he reminded us all that there comes a time when silence is betrayal. So let's all aim to break the silence. So this concludes our panel discussion. Again, thank you, panelists, for such an enjoyable conversation. And now I would like to give Mr. Ben Hodge an opportunity to share a few words from your student advisor.
Hello, everybody. What an honor it is to be here on this event. I want to keep things very brief and say, as something I put into the chat, that I'm extremely humbled every time I hear these young women speak. This is not the future. This is the present. And I am humbled and thankful and blessed that I have an opportunity to be an educator, a very important profession, and to create safe spaces for all learners to feel safe, comfortable, valued, seen, listened to, represented, and accepted. Central has been working towards diversity since 2007, when our demographics started to change a lot, and so when our diversity program started in 2007, I was very interested in connecting and was one of the early educators on board with this. So in many ways, this is an extension. I've never stopped within the walls of my classroom doing this. And this year, in 2020 and 2021, it's shifted from within the walls of my classroom to now to the greater Central York community, and now through this book ban and through this process, the larger York community and on a nationwide level. I just want to say I have so much love and respect for these officers, for Miss Patty Jackson, who has been a friend, a colleague, and these four individuals specifically are not just the present, are not just the future, they are the present. And they rose to the occasion. We have been told that we write speeches for them, and we've claimed that we've indoctrinated these children, and I can tell you 1000% that the only thing that I did was create a safe space for these young people to come in and say, how can I help? And what can I do? And how can I help make sure that we do this the safe way and the diplomatic way, so that, because they're students. And so I'm so proud of them. And I'm very thankful for Crispus Attucks and for this event. And it really means a lot to be here. And just like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, I threw this into the chat. It's actually a paraphrase of something from his Bloody Sunday speech. But our lives begin to not matter when we stay silent about the things that do. It's a very loose paraphrase of one of the things he said in his Bloody Sunday speech. And Dr. King has been a huge influence on my classroom environment building and my training and my personal belief. So I'm honored to be here on this day that celebrates a person who paid with his life for justice and for love. And I pray deeply every day that these kids and our community can become a beloved community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. At this time, I would like to ask Mr. Jefferson, the Director of Employment and Training for Crispus Attucks York, to give our closing remarks.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank everyone again, especially our panelists, but all of you who tuned in this morning. We had almost 69 people who tuned in. Of course, these are different times and we had to use different means. We weren't sure how this was going to go this morning, switching to the Zoom format. But with the weather, I think we made a wise choice. We want to thank Phil Drayton, who was our sort of technology guru here and pulled this thing off. Our senior leadership staff who got together and organized this program this morning. You young ladies were great. This was a vision I had to bring you guys together, and you just made my day. This is the best Martin Luther King celebration day I've ever had. We want to thank, on behalf of CA, Bobby Simpson, Mr. Simpson, our CEO, our senior leadership staff. We want to thank you for making this again a great 40th anniversary for our Martin Luther King Day celebration. We call it a day on, not a day off. Mr. Hodge and Mrs. Jackson, Ms. Jackson, we want to thank you for just the work that you've done with these young ladies.